M. The Media Project. The Vermont Technology Alliance. The VTTA is the only statewide organization focused on Vermont's tech business sector and entrepreneurs. Our business members are Fortune 500 companies, startup founders, small business owners, and soloists. We provide advocacy, recruiting of tech talent, events, and other networking opportunities. We are the heart of the tech ecosystem in Vermont. Become a member now at vtta.org. The Vermont Technology Alliance. Tech thrives here.
Hey, good evening, all you Innovate02 listeners out there. This is your co-host, Scott M. Graves. I'm excited tonight to have our guests. I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Ryan Munn, but before I do, and he's going to introduce to you our guests and the company that they represent, I also want to give a shout out to Will Jeffries, our co-host, coming from the wilds of Burlington. It's actually our urban center here in the great state of Vermont. How you doing, Will?
Pretty good, and frozen over now. The lake is finally freezing out, extended distances for the first time since 2019, and just seeing that has made me very happy. Winters of my childhood.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, back in the day, growing up and coming to Vermont and going to the ancestral crib on Lake Champlain and ice boat racing. You haven't been able to do that for a while. Ryan Munn, we have our guests who hang out occasionally, so we are told, at our sponsor, the Black River Innovation Campus. Of course, we're talking about our friends over in beautiful downtown Springfield, Vermont.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, it's great to have both Darren and Matt here. I've met both you guys through the BRIC and had some really great conversations already, so really excited to share what you're doing with Humnet here. So we have Darren Mark, who is the founder of Humnet, and Matt Walton, who is acting COO as well. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about your backgrounds, kind of what brought you together, and what really brought Humnet to fruition is it's actually available for people to download and play with today. So Matt, I'll start with you. Share a little bit of your background with us. Give us a quick intro.
Okay, sure. I've been a serial entrepreneur, basically, for a fairly long period of time. And I had the great good fortune to meet Darren actually through CORI, the Center on Rural Innovation. And I guess the first time we actually laid eyes on each other was at BRIC. So, you know, it's an origin story for BRIC.
Yeah.
In terms of my background, I've been involved in networked interactive systems technology for, I'm not embarrassed to say, since the 80s, okay? Since, you know, when people were saying, gee, you know, this internet's going to be a big thing. And lo and behold, it was. Who knew? And along the way, I migrated into healthcare. And then specifically, I got very involved in what I'm doing now in terms of sort of a interim primary focus for me. And that is I'm the CEO of a 100-plus bed treatment facility, actually in Santa Monica, California, where we are the largest provider of mental health and substance use disorder treatment for the west side of Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
So that's my day job now. In fact, you're talking about Champlain freezing over, which is near and dear to my heart, by the way, because I since birth have gone to the Adirondacks, just the other side, 15 miles due west of Ticonderoga and Paradox Lake. But I was glancing at my forecast for this coming week here, because this is part of LA, and we're going to have an unprecedented 93 degrees. The other side of climate change here. And then I'll pass the baton to the real star of the show, which is Darren. But I also spent the weekend reactivating all of my significant others and my new electronic equipment, because we are one of the people that were displaced by the Palisade fires. So, I
sorry to hear that.
Direct firsthand experience of that. But the real star of the show, besides its founder, is Humnet. And just last reason, why am I here? I'm here because I was a mentor as part of the Corey program. They asked me to meet this crazy guy who had this crazy idea. He showed me his crazy idea, and then he got me to do a hum. And I was hooked. That's simple.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you for that, Matt. And really sorry to hear about the fire, and really glad you're okay, and appreciate you being able to be here and being with us. And so, Darren, really great to see you again, and really excited to learn what brought you to such an amazing product and service that you're building and putting out in the world. And show us a little bit about your background and what brought you here.
No comment. Just kidding. Has anyone ever said that on a podcast before?
Up until now, no, I don't think so.
Well, one time I did get, I'm not a podcast type. And I thought to myself, that's something we should have talked about ahead of time,
Right, just dead air. And thank you, Matt. Thank you for what you just said, but also, I guess, just thank you for being on this journey to me. And I think a great place to start, and shout out to Actuator and Brick, is, I had heard about Brick Actuator from someone who had been involved with it, and I applied. And I applied once, and it was kind of a false start for an actuator cohort, and then they restarted once Vin, the new executive director, joined, and they assigned me a mentor. They actually assigned me two mentors. I had a different mentor before Matt, and they said, well, we think there's this other guy that we also want to hook you up with, could be interesting. And actually, Matt and I met the first time my wife was undergoing outpatient surgery, and we met somewhere in Lebanon and took a walk for an hour, because I'm an avid walker, and it turns out Matt is an avid walker too. So we took an hour-long walk and talked all about Humnet, and Matt's reaction to what we were building was just really exciting. I feel like maybe I should take a few minutes to just kind of give our elevator pitch to tell people what Humnet is for folks that are listening.
Sure. Yeah. Give us a quick
please. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So we're building the World Wide Web of empathy. And what that means is, people are walking around with these devices in our pockets. We're more connected than we've ever been, at least digitally. But with the loneliness epidemic and what's going on in the world and society, we find ourselves feeling lonely, feeling more isolated, less connected than ever. And the core idea that I've really been looking for, the solution for a very long time, and Matt talked about the 80s. Back in the 80s, I just started thinking about this as a thought experiment. How could you get people to feel deeply connected around a thought or a need or a hope at the same time? How could we just recognize that we're all the same, that there's this core humanity in each of us? And Ryan, you asked me before we started, how do we pronounce Humnet? and you can answer, and the little stroke over the U, you can actually pronounce it 3 ways. So you can pronounce it Humnet, HumanNet, or humanity, like pronounce the N-E-T. And so that's really intentional, that there's a hum, because sort of what is the frequency and hum and vibration of humanity if we all felt that connection. But the word humanity itself is really compelling to us, right? Because what does it mean? On the one hand, it means, excuse me, on the one hand, humanity means all of us. And on the other hand, it means the best in each of us. So the core event we call a hum, and I like to give an example. So let's say something's going on with mom, right? The options right now are texting, phone calls, it's super stressful. And how do you just hold someone's hand? How do you just be present with them? So you can create a hum for mom. Words in the middle of the screen might say, praying for mom, thinking of mom, sending love to mom. And then through haptic vibration, you can feel, as more people join, the vibration increases, and you see the glowing beacons on a map of who in the world and where in the world people are thinking of mom in that moment. So really the task for us is, how do we engineer a sense of connection in real time to others? And then that's infinitely scalable. So the other story I like to give is my daughter worried about the planet, standing in front of the Brattleboro post office with her Save the Planet sign, and it's cold and it's winter and she gets splashed by a slush puddle, and she's wondering, does anyone see me? Is this making a difference? I'm going home, I'm cold. But Greta Thunberg decided not to go home, to stick it out. And so imagine if my daughter is one of 87,000 people who's standing in front of their post offices and they're cold, but they can see that there's 87,000 others there in that moment, and then that's super empowering. And as I've gotten to talk to Matt more, we've discovered that there are all these compelling use cases for people in recovery. And one day Matt and I were talking, and Matt has shared a lot about the recovery experience, and we hit on the idea of a hum buddy system. You know, what if someone gets triggered and it's between meetings and they can't make it to a meeting, and you could just get an alert on your phone and just hold someone, you know, on the one hand, you're holding them accountable, but on the other hand, you're just holding them and saying, I'm here, I can get you through this for a few minutes. So just coming full circle, at the end of that actuator cohort, an actuator is an incubator where they take you through the lean business canvas and you explore all the aspects of it. And at the end, I said to Matt, you know, Matt, let's set some boundaries. I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to just assume I could take more of your wisdom and time. Set some boundaries for me so I know what to expect. I used the Yiddish word. I said, Matt, I don't want to be a schnorrer. And Matt said, well, let me think about it. And he came back with a proposal. How about I be your COO and give you a certain amount of my time for a certain amount of equity, and I help you raise a certain amount of money so we can build Humnet and turn it into a reality. And, you know, so he's been walking by my side for, you know, over a year now. It's just been fantastic.
That's excellent. It's amazing. And so let's put that in a timeline a little bit. Which actuator was that?
There's that dead air we were talking about.
It's pre-recorded, so it won't be. Ooh.
I want to say it was actuator fall 2023.
Okay. All right. So a couple of years in the making. And where were you at the time? Were you purely idea stage when you joined the actuator, or had you built something of some kind?
We had a proof of concept. You know, it's funny. I had another advisor who was helping me, and he said, well, I wouldn't call it a POC. I would call it a POS, like a piece of shit. But, you know, somewhere between MVP and proof of concept. And one of the interesting things that Matt was instrumental in was just saying, stop building. it's good enough. We've got, Matt has joined me in this gratitude hum. We've done a pilot with close to 100 college students. We've got other people using it just from a test and validation standpoint. And it's good enough for us to build the real V1 version. And we know that to make something that's scalable and has huge viral potential, that we don't want to push it out there too soon and have it break. One of the interesting things, actually, I think before Actuator even started, and I was talking with Mike Schmidt at the session 0, and he was one of the advisors, and I was kind of saying, oh, well, it's just some words in a circle. And Mike said, you're not listening to the story that you just told me, where people are depending on this at critical moments in their life. And even though the interface is simple, you have to be able to deliver.
Right.
And so we've actually turned down, I had a friend who was part of the Medical Reserve Corps, and she wanted to do a hum for the first responders after the fire in Hawaii, who were so devastated. And I said, I just don't know that we're ready. It's really in proof of concept stage. And the last thing I would want is to promise like 500 first responder community that we're going to do this event, and then some of them can't actually join the hum.
Yeah, right. Well, so that brings you to where you're at kind of right now, right? So this is years in the making, a lot of building going into it, and now it's kind of like, how do you scale and find those next set of partners that can take that to a level that you can make those promises, right?
Exactly right. And so one of the great things that came out of Actuator, other than Matt Walton, is Matt Dunn from Corey announced the Green Mountain Accelerator Fund after, I think it was after that November session. And Vin came up to us and said, you guys are totally right for that fund. And so we now actually have a commitment from the Green Mountain Accelerator Fund for $50,000 as part of a $250,000 pre-seed round. And so we're really starting to reach out to angel investors and the network here in Vermont and beyond Vermont. We've great relationship with Melissa and Jay at Corey, as well as folks in Brattleboro, and starting to bring together and brainstorm around who are the angel investors here in the state. And just had a great conversation with Lauren Bass from Launch VT last week, who said something really interesting. What is your ideal investor persona? Which I'd never really heard before. People talk about your ideal customer persona, but no one had ever said, think about who your ideal investor persona is, and let's then go after those investors and not waste time just talking to people because they have investor in their title.
You have an interesting dynamic at work here, which I think is, and I want you to talk about it, which is we're trying to overcome a sense of disconnection in relationships. That's what it seems to me is at the core of why you're doing what you're doing. We also live in a world where we're increasingly understanding that our long-term, this goes well beyond before there was digital technology. In the West, in particular, we have this sort of we trust technology to solve all the problems, right? Part of that is the way we sell new technology, like, oh, everything changes after this and it's going to get better. And people give up a lot of their own personal agency to technology in ways that end up with unhealthy results. And yet here you are with you're trying to say people are going to use this tech. I'm not going to try to put words in your mouth. I want you to comment on what I'm saying as an observer, right? People are going to use their device the way they're going to use it, right? And are there ways we can take the existing the existing device itself and the way that people use it and actually create meaningful connection, right? Because it is through our use of our devices, often they become the instrument of disconnection, not connection. And I just find all of that philosophically interesting and also operationally interesting. And as a fundraiser, also very interesting. It's interesting on all points, you know?
Imagine a vibrant region that embraces innovative technology and systems, allowing individuals and businesses to grow and thrive within the natural and cultural lifestyle of Vermont. Imagine the Black River Innovation Campus. Our community includes business and technology programming, co-working and technology tools, and other exciting experiences that are quickly creating an outsized impact to our little corner of northern New England here in Springfield, Vermont. PC Mag rates Springfield, Vermont number 8 for the best work-from-home cities in the U.S. Join us in Vermont. Begin your journey at bricvt.org.
I'm going to let Matt talk to this a little bit because we've explored this a lot, and he has some in the past talked about well, there was an analogy to cigarette smoking also back in the day. So I'll let Matt address that.
Sure. So as I indicated, in my brief summation of my background, I've basically been a serial entrepreneur for the last 30 plus years in networked interactive systems. And some of them have been pretty sophisticated. And so one of the reasons why I got excited when Darren showed me and then let me experience a hum was that it, unlike the technologies that we mostly use now, converts what is part of the problem of the alienation that we experience, which is the asynchronicity of that modality that we all live in. Okay, and they're familiar with the term asynchronous. So, in the old days, if I wanted to talk to you, I had to get on the phone. We had to talk. We had to have a connection. It had to be a connection, literally, and at least we were therefore in that moment in the same electron-based space together. With the advent of the internet, everything became asynchronous. And that asynchronicity, i.e. I post something to Facebook, you see it an hour later, you post something there, somebody then reposts it to Instagram, somebody thinks that's cool, relates that to TikTok. I mean, and so theoretically, we're all like communicating with each other, except none of us is communicating at the same time. And all of us are engaged in sort of this continuous editorial evaluation of everything that's going on around us, which actually further detaches us from the actual experience of what we're experiencing. What is enormously powerful about Humnet and where we are beginning to really zone in on the first use cases like Darren was talking about, where this thing can be most powerful, is where people are experiencing something that is intensely personal and emotional in nature. However, it is also something that if they're by themselves, they do not experience in the same way they experience if they can experience with somebody shared. And that can be a happy thing. That can be, if you're a Canadian last week, we won the big game. Okay, not to pick a sore point, but they did, right? Or if it's an unhappy thing, if it's like mom is sick We've got 20 different family members sprinkled all around the country. We want to be there for mom. We want to be there together. Yeah, we can have email strings. We can have text strings. We can even do Zooms. Okay. But those are hard to get organized. What if we had an easy way for all of us to say, let's just come together for 5 minutes. Let's just think about mom. And let's just all put our energy together into something that says, Mom, get better. We love you. Okay. Just something, it sounds simple. It sounds trite. But what is compelling about Humnet, and if you haven't already detected this, my colleague, Darren, is not just a serial entrepreneur. He actually is a frustrated sitcom writer of some actually considerable credentials. So he can be a master of turning a phrase. Okay. And one of the best things he's ever said about Humnet is trying to describe Humnet with words. And the experience of Humnet is like trying to describe somebody who's never eaten pizza, what it's like to have a slice. Okay. Think about it. Okay. If somebody said, hey, listen, got this great concept. We're going to do this flat dough. We're going to put some tomato sauce on it. Then we're going to sprinkle a little bit of, oregano, and we're going to put some pepperoni, put it in an oven at about 8,000 degrees, and it's going to come out. It's going to be really delicious. You go, what are you talking about?
You left out the cheese. I just have to.
Well, the cheese, right?
Yeah.
So what are you
Gonna
talking
need
about?
some cheese.
That isn't even the food. Okay. So when he starts talking about haptic vibration, what does that mean? It means I got this in my pocket. Believe it or not,
Matt's holding his phone.
I'm holding my phone.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's radio.
I'm holding my phone, and what I'm going to say about it is that, believe it or not, this thing with Humnet, as people join, starts to vibrate.
Right.
When we talk about a haptic vibration, it's vibrating, and the more people, the more the intensity, the more it vibrates. And guess what? That when I'm holding it in my hand, it's like, whoa, this thing is starting to feel. I'm starting to have a physical expression of it. It also, Darren alluded to, but it also uses the full range of what are now well-documented psychoactive tones. Scott, you indicated you're a musician. So we're using...
Inspired by like binaural.
Yeah, we're using, exactly. We're using binaural tone technologies geared to a particular type of emotional reaction that we're trying to generate with people as part of the overall experience. So now you've got two senses that, in terms of what's typically thought of as device-based communication, you're not using. So and then you put people in the same context around, we're praying for mom, and then you begin to show on a map where everybody is, and you don't have to do this for a long period of time. It's one of the other advantages of it. 5 minutes. So at 5 minutes, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we're all going to get together. We're all going to do a hum for mom. Guess what? It turns out it has a very powerful emotive reaction, which is very different than did we do a group chat.
Yeah.
And so if you'll permit me, I'll just go a little bit further on this. The reason why this is of such compelling interest to me beyond my own personal experience of this is, as I've already indicated, I'm very directly involved every single day in trying to treat amongst the most difficult population on the planet. We deal with the unhoused, mentally ill, cross-addicted population of Los Angeles. It's an internationally recognized problem. There's 75,000 people living on the streets here who have severe mental health and substance use disorder conditions
with chronic issues, but also layered chronic issues going on. Yeah.
And where recovery is not a one and done.
Yeah.
You don't bring them in and give them 7 days of detox and pat them on the back and say, you're good. You don't do that. Give them another 60 or 90 days of residential and pat them on the back and say, you're good. For people like this, it's a long-term process where one of the most important and powerful of all principles of recovery science, and I use recovery specifically because we're not interested just in treating people. We want to recover them. One of the most powerful phrases is the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah, right.
The opposite of addiction is connection. And so what Darren has innovated here is even homeless people have got these. And in other words, we have a device that we carry around all the time, which is a connector. What's been lacking is a well thought out, well integrated, simple way of facilitating connection using the device we already have. So,
and it's taking a tech that is so in so many different ways a disconnecting device and consciously saying, how do we take this? It's not good enough to say to people, you know what you need? You need a device holiday. Well, that's not going to work for everybody. And there's as many reasons why that may not work as there are stars in the sky, as there are people on the planet. So, and you're onto something with vibration. For all of the parties on this interview, there's a place in Anatolia that operated during the time of Jalaluddin Rumi, a hospital. In fact, there were many of them built. The folks there in what's now Turkey over many centuries realized the healing powers of vibration. Mm-hmm. And they built into the walls, into the entire infrastructure of these hospitals, essentially echo chambers, what we would call reverb chambers in modern phenomenon, and music, and sometimes just raw vibrations, which by that time, long in history, were we able to measure musical frequency, really air frequency. And so they would purposely play frequencies or combinations of them incessantly, depending on what they were trying to do, either physically or mentally for the patient. We now know in our modern era that forests, their overlying principle, primary vibration when they vibrate is our C. It's no accident that in most musical traditions, the center of pitch starts or is centered upon C. I'm not just talking about modern well-tempered C, but I'm talking about in the grand scheme of human hearing. This is also the same pitch that just by accident, or maybe not by accident, as the viol da gamba was developed into our modern cello. An instrument that you wrap around your body to play. And guess what? The average 7-year-old child, their body also resonates with a primary vibration of C.
Right.
This is why we believe that children are naturally desirous of being in and connected to the forest. You put a child in the forest and they're intimate with that place almost immediately. You know, we somehow in the 1200s we inherently knew to use vibrations to heal, and it's taken that 800 years to get back to that with what you're
Scott,
doing.
are you saying that, like, were there better health outcomes for viol da gamba players than some of the other instruments?
I'm saying this is why musicians, man, just have it going on, right?
Well,
this is why, go ahead, Matt.
Well,
sorry.
And to piggyback on that, one of the reasons why Darren and I feel that we're on the right track is that we've been able to attract some really remarkable advisors as part of our advisory board. And one of them is one of the preeminent sound scientists in the country. His name is Eric Richardson. And Eric Richardson is actively part of a team that in the last several years has taken a sound vibration therapeutic and gotten it approved by the FDA for the treatment of Alzheimer's and dementia.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they literally have been able to show that for the purposes of reestablishing the synaptic connections that are necessary for people to slow the progress of dementia and Alzheimer's disease, they can utilize sound waves to in effect disrupt what is otherwise a downward negative pattern.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons why we're very encouraged is because Eric knows the stuff. And so when we were able to show this to Eric, and Eric went, I get it. You know, I totally get it. And oh, by the way, and where he's already starting to contribute to us, I'd love to build a sound library for you guys, so that as we raise the funding to really flesh this out, so it's not a POS, and it's the way Darren characterized it. It's a platform. It truly is a platform to facilitate what Darren referenced appropriately. We think, while it's rather grandiose, nothing like this exists. A platform for promoting global connectivity, global empathy, a world wide web of empathy. And in order to do that, you know, I respond very favorably to a certain set of frequencies. Will, you may respond to a different one.
That's right.
Ryan, we may share this, but you're going through a different kind of an emotional experience. And so for you, you need something that is different than that. Well, the idea that we can, with this platform, tailor this experience, again, for the podcast listeners.
Holding up the phone.
Right. But holding up the phone is so that the experience itself can be tailored with a different tone. It can also, because the actual interface at this point is a very pleasant color scheme with a circle and a circling ball that, if you wish, you can actually run your finger around, which is, for some people, for meditative purposes, very powerful. But that color pattern in the ultimate release product will be made variable. In other words, there's a potential to customize based on individual or collective desires the experience, where the most important thing is, once you've done that, you're not doing it by yourself. You're doing it together.
I wanted to circle back to answer Scott's question also a little bit differently. Scott, you know, I have lots of interesting customer discovery type conversations. And a friend of mine, Susie, is a pastor. And I was talking with Susie one day about Humnet. And actually, I have two really good different customer discovery pastor conversations. But as far as, can Humnet on a device be the solution where the device is so often the problem? And Susie said, oh, so I could open Humnet instead of Instagram, and I could see who needs 5 minutes of my presence. And I could spend 5 minutes in a hum with someone that's struggling, or with people that care about the thing that I care about, instead of just scrolling through reels and getting sucked down the rabbit hole on Instagram. And so part of our goal is, you're absolutely right. It's very hard as the intervention to say, turn off social media, turn off your phone, put it away, go take a walk in the forest. We absolutely should and can do that, and go take a walk in the forest with Matt Walton or with a dear friend, or congregate, you know, at Contra Dance with Will and his people. but there are also, ways where you could pick up your phone and just have a behavior change and have a real radical transformation in just a minute. And I've actually had a couple of experiences. I know I'm also just testing the device on my own at this point. But I've had some really profound experiences. One of them was when I was just researching for our pitch deck, and I was curious how many people currently are part of the Reddit chronic pain group. And so I went and I saw that there were 60-something thousand members of the Reddit chronic pain group. Someone happened to post that day, "Today's my last day. I can't take it anymore." And we just have this working proof of concept version of the app. And I thought to myself, here as a human being, I have a choice. I could reach out to them. I could comment, and like within Reddit, and that's not going to help this person at all. Or I could reach out. So I DM'd this person and I said, "Hey, we're testing this app. I'm struggling too. Would you like to try it? Maybe it can help." And she said yes. And so I created a hum, and the words in the middle of the screen were, "You're not alone. It gets better. You can get through this."
Find Innovato 2 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to Interchain Live on YouTube for video podcasts. Innovato 2 is a collaboration of Interchain Live and M the Media Project.